Okay, and how do I start these? Oh, this is the question I have to ask. What is the wiki URL?
FinalFantasy.fandom.com
Final Fantasy
wikis.
Okay.
.fandom.com.
Yes.
Almost. It is https://final_fantasy.wiki/final_fantasy_wiki.com. Wait, no. There was already .com.
Are gonna be all
I don't know what the sound of a middle finger being raised is, but I'm trying to make it to learn now.
Okay. Do you think this joke will ever get old, or will I just keep doing it forever?
We know the answer to that.
Okay, so it is February, and welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki.com/Final Fantasy Wiki podcast. I'm your host, BlueHighwind. I'm back, baby. I wasn't here around in January. I'm sorry to have missed you. I was busy drinking in Vegas and then going to Hawaii. That was more important to me than this podcast. Everyone needs a vacation. Fuck capitalism. Joining me tonight is DrakeyC. First time on the podcast. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Okay.
I got Pixel Remaster, so I'm golden.
You are golden. And also Technobliterator, who's been here plenty of times, so whatever.
Yeah, I'm not that exciting, but
no, you're not.
I've also got Pixel Remaster. I'm also golden. Thank you for asking.
I am BlueHighwind, so I will never be golden. I also do not have Pixel Remaster. Okay, so
on both counts.
I mean, all right. If I want to play Final Fantasy VI, we might as well go right into Pixel Remaster because that's the exciting news of this month.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the biggest thing. If I want to play Final Fantasy VI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this crate over to my left here. That's where I have all my old game consoles in a big giant pile of a mess. I will dig out my DS. I will put my old Final Fantasy VI GBA cart in there. And I will play it that way, because that's the way I most enjoy it. And I don't think the Pixel Remaster looks good. Hot take.
Okay. Well,
everyone's entitled to their opinion, even if they're wrong.
Yes, I was gonna explain why you might want to reconsider that, because so my kind of review of Pixel Remaster so far is, if you ignore the fact that it's buggy as hell at this stage, right? You know.
Well, so was the original. It's just being true to form.
Yeah, exactly. If you ignore the fact that there are bugs present in this version, which will probably be fixed within a few weeks or so, this is the best way to play the game.
And the original Super Nintendo bugs will never be fixed. Therefore, they are part of the elegant tapestry of history, and we will cherish them for all time.
This is true.
But yeah, so you mentioned the graphics. The thing that the only problem I really have with the graphics is the everyone agrees the overworld map is way too bright. But they building interiors and that, they seem to be mostly based on they seem to be taken from the Super NES version, so it's not as bright as the GBA version. But the exteriors, like the outside of towns and dungeons and that, those areas have been redone, and they look great. Like the Phantom Forest looks fantastic and has this mist blowing over it. The Empire looks great and has like this really cool effect of the sun hitting it from a certain angle. The area I think it looks really awesome. To give a specific example is Zozo. It still looks like Zozo, but Pixel Remaster adds so many touches to the atmosphere. There's this eerie purple lighting coming from the interiors of some of the buildings. There's cracked windows. There's graffiti on the walls. The signs over the doors are lit up, but they're sparking and flickering. And it just adds so much to the atmosphere. And overall, like, at its worst, the game looks as good as the Super NES version. At its best, it blows it away.
What does the graffiti say?
It's not like messages. It's like tags, like street art or something like that. Like the one I did remember seeing, it's like it looked like a mural of a pair of eyes or something.
I was hoping that a Final Fantasy game would finally say ACAB. When will they have the bravery to say it in one way or another?
Well, I mean, the story of Final Fantasy VI is kind of ACAB, you know. I mean, the Gestalian Empire ain't exactly the best people in the world.
Well, all empires are bastards is not a particularly brave stance in fantasy or in the real world, but, you know.
True enough.
This is not a series that I
The
think is...
Arcadians?
Yeah. Well, alright, I'm very pro-Arcadian, and I'm not proud of this. The older I get, the more I'm like, you know, that's a really shitty opinion to have, isn't it?
So, like, we talked about the graphics a lot. I will say my favorite thing with the Pixel remaster so far is the soundtrack. I mean, like, you know, so I think if you remember when I talked about the soundtrack for Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster, I said it's like 90% perfect, but the 10% is just some tracks here and there where they make a couple weird instrument choices, and I don't understand why they did that. I haven't found a single problem with the instrumentation for Final Fantasy VI so far, you know, and it just feels like, you know, it feels like every track is exactly what Uematsu actually had in mind when he was composing it, but now he can actually do it. So now he can actually put it into place, right? So, for instance, like Cyan's theme, which I was never huge on Cyan. By the way, I think Cyan's gameplay-wise is kind of fixed in this version. But like, I was never huge on Cyan before, so I always overlooked his theme. But now he has this theme in the Japanese version. Like, he has this theme that sounds really Japanese, which is how it was supposed to sound. And it has such a, like, atmosphere to it. And, you know, you actually feel like you're looking at a samurai knight in, like, Adoma, which I guess is Japanese inspired.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they just have such great instrumentation for all of the tracks now.
You know? What do you mean he's been fixed gameplay-wise? You don't have to wait, like, 30 seconds for him to do his level 8 attack?
Apparently this is it's how they worked in the mobile release, and they retained it. You select Bushido, Sword Tech, whatever, and you select the command he wants to input, and then he starts charging on his own, and the battle keeps going, and you can give other characters command while Cyan charges and then attacks. And he does seem to relatively charge faster than he would in the previous versions too.
Oh, much faster. Like, so for instance, like in the first one, basically the only way to use him was to use the Bushido for the first one, which was Fang, right? But now
I would wait until level 4. I think that was like a 3-part attack, wasn't it? I gotta.
Yeah, the highest level one was like it can kill all enemies. I think it was.
Yeah, that one didn't work.
Number 4 and 7 are 4-hit attacks.
Yeah, those are the good ones.
But like, there's one that I really like now, which is the second one, which like basically is like a counter attack. But so when you charge it up and then you select it, you know, when Cyan gets hit, he'll respond with like something that's like 5 times the damage of a normal attack or something stupid like that. It basically just kills anything.
I remember number 2 didn't work. I feel like I never used it because I think it might have been glitched in some way. This apparently the attack is called Sky or Retort.
Yes.
Yeah, it did have a glitch, the Psycho Cyan bug.
Psycho Cyan bug? Alright, let me find out what that is.
Yeah, you can find videos on YouTube. I don't remember the exact thing, but it involves like imping someone or KOing someone. I don't forget the exact setup. But basically, it like tricks the coding into making Cyan attack, and then he counters his own attack with another attack and another attack, and he just attacks over and over and over endlessly until the battle is over. So that's why they call it Psycho Cyan.
Psycho Cyan bug. It just sounds like a Metal Gear Solid term to me for some reason.
Right? That's what I was thinking.
Oh, DrakeyC, we haven't properly introduced you in any good way, but you are an admin on this wiki, right? You are admin, yes. Right? Yeah, okay. I can't remember who's what anymore. And you also, you have been modding Final Fantasy VI for, I think, well over a decade now, right?
Not quite. I started modding it 5 years ago when I did a My Little Pony thing, and I've done standalone mods since then.
Okay. So
the one I'm proud of, I uploaded a video of a YouTube. I always found Edgar's air anchor useless. Like, yay, it's Edgar's ultimate tool, and it's instant death attack when the enemy gets a turn. So I modded it into the bazooka, which is basically a souped-up auto crossbow where Edgar fires a barrage of missiles at enemies. I'm like, much cooler, much more fun, much more effective.
So you know Final Fantasy
VI. To have a
VI.
bazooka.
You probably know Final Fantasy VI better than anyone here, I assume, then? Since you've actually...
I don't know if I know it better than Techno, but I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
No, you know it better than me. Like, I know it pretty well, but I would still like pass the torch on to you.
I mean,
I've had to get deep and intimate with it. Yes, there's been many long nights.
Yeah, and also the My Little Pony version, which just makes what you said all the creepier.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway,
go in with an open mind. You might find you enjoy Philly Fantasy VI.
Well,
you know what?
that version.
I would probably
Like,
play Philly Fantasy VI before I would play the Pixel Remaster. I say that with all love and respect, but I just disagree philosophically with what they've done with these versions. We've been over this a million times over the last 6 months. Actually, I'm gonna miss this conversation because we'll never need to have it again after this. It's over. We won't get a Pixel Remaster 7. At least I don't think we will.
I mean, that wouldn't really make Fantasy VII, which is a different can of worms.
Assuming Square Enix remembers it exists.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they not remember Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, it's a shame. Final Fantasy VII. That's just the one you never hear about anymore. It's like,
well, other questions. I remember they announced it. What is it, like more than 2 years ago now? I think. We're still waiting for anything on it.
We actually have news on Ever Crisis, which why don't we stay to 6, then we'll get back to it. Might as well stay slightly on topic. So,
right.
I guess we should talk about two major revised scenes. Do you want to go to that?
Before we get to that, so while we're on the subject of characters being like rebalanced a little bit, so Cyan was the main one, but there's another character who was rebalanced even from the mobile version, and that's Sabin, right? So, Sabin, already, my favorite character in the game, my favorite of the heroes, like Kefka's my favorite character, but my favorite of the heroes, already like probably the strongest one other than maybe Edgar, gets a huge buff in the Pixel Remaster that he did not need, right? So in basically every version of Final Fantasy VI up to this version, right? What happens is you press Blitz and then you enter the combination if you can remember it, and then Sabin performs that Blitz attack.
Well, you can't remember up, right, down, left, AA, or whatever it was? Crap. I've already forgotten. Phantom Rush. I'll look up the combination. It's something like that.
I'm laughing extra hard because I did make that a Blitz combination in my ROM hack.
Phantom Rush.
Continue.
Right, so in every version of it, you have to remember the input, and if you get the input wrong, then you don't perform the attack. So basically,
it's left, up, right, down, left, A. That's for Phantom Rush.
Yeah. Yes. Whereas in Pixel Remaster, how it works is you select Blitz, and then it gives you a menu similar to the tools menu or something, where it gives you all the different blitzes you can input, and then you click one of the blitzes, and then it says follow this combination, and you got to follow the combination to get it right.
So they show you what it is.
Yes, they show you what the combination is. So basically, it's no longer about memory. It's now about your ability to input it only.
So it's like Orin's limit breaks in Final Fantasy X, then.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly like that. Yeah. Exactly like that. So yeah, the guy who didn't need a buff got a huge buff.
Yeah.
Which, they kind of made him way more forgiving, which I'm not mad about at all, because I love Sabin. But yeah, so
yeah, it's basically impossible to mess up his blitzes now.
Pretty much. It's pretty much impossible to mess him up.
I could find a way to screw
you know,
up that whole thing. I'm sure I could.
Well, technically you can, but it's only if you press A before you're done inputting the combination. But if you make a mistake, you just start it over.
So, our Let's Play of Final Fantasy VI, where Scathe kept messing up all the blitzes, that's not going to happen.
I think it will. He'll find a way.
Maybe.
Look, when the heat of
the
ATB is going down, and you know you have to go and hit the buttons as soon as possible, you might end up hitting left, left, left instead of left, left, up, up, right, down, down, left, A.
I guess if you don't have wait mode on, then it's still kind of challenging.
You play with wait mode?
Of course I do.
Oh man, that's
okay.
a shame.
What was I saying?
I don't know.
So the only character I was a little disappointed didn't get much of a rework is Gal. Like, I think he gets a tiny rework, which is to do with, like, you know, when you go to the Velt and you've done Leap with him, it's easier for him to, like, come back and join the party again. Like, but I don't remember the details on it. But the thing I was a little upset about with Gal is, you know, you have a giant menu of all the different rages, and you don't know what any of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what just kind of ruins Gal for me. Like, you know, I know we have, you know, our own website where I can look up what they do.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that while I'm playing the game, you know?
Yeah, no one wants to do that.
Right.
But that's why everyone used Stray Cat, because I'm not going to bother to remember more than 5 rages max for what they do.
And if you're like me and you forget to, like, fight Stray Cat and at the earliest opportunity, then all of a sudden Gal is kind of useless to you. So that's the one I think they had the opportunity to kind of give you a little bit of a description of each one, like, oh, this makes you, like, weak to this element and strong with this one, and it gives you this attack. And, like, they had the opportunity to give them a tiny little description, and they didn't do that. Which I'm a
like,
little
even just saying
about.
what attacks they can use would have helped.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I'm a little upset that they didn't change Gal very much, but water under the bridge, everyone else is basically as good as they were in the first, and in 2 cases better than they were in the first.
DrakeyC, how is my boy Setzer, who is my favorite character from Final Fantasy VI?
Setzer's still really good. He still has slots, and I don't know why, but they just reused the Super NES graphics for the slots, but now they're really blown up. And I get that they did that because you have to be able to see it on the phone screen, but they look ugly. But he's still a lot of fun. He's still got slots. And I've actually had 2 funny things with Setzer. The game has an auto battle system where it'll keep inputting the previous commands. And I did that with Setzer after he used a prismatic flash or /7 flush with the slots, and he did it again. So I thought for a while, oh, he can chain the same slot result? But I ended up finding, no, he don't. He just spins the slots again, so to speak, and he gets the same result. And what I did find is that because he just keeps spinning the slots to get a different result, during the auto battle, I got Joker's death and party wiped. So I'm like, you'd think they would have not let that happen, you know, that you can have auto battle on and Setzer can accidentally kill the party. And another funny thing I had is, this is a glitch, and I don't know how, and people have also triggered it with Gal. When I was going to the floating continent, I had Setzer and Mog in the party. I commanded Mog to dance, and Setzer started dancing. He used Sunbath and like Mog got his turn like he had a dance, but Setzer danced. He did Sunbath, his ATB refilled, and then he did Wind Slash.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, I guess Setzer's a dancer now.
You know what? He's fabulous enough to do it. He is a handsome man.
Yeah, he is. Like, imagine that cape flaring out as he spins. It's amazing.
He's basically good Sephiroth, which is why I like him. Anyway,
does that imply that the other Sephiroth is not good? Because I agree, he is not good.
The other Sephiroth is evil and kind of creepy. When you really get down to it, extremely creepy. Okay, but you know you know what? I feel like we're going to a bad place describing this relationship as creepy.
Speaking of things, that were originally creepy, but they fixed them. Yes. Edgar's line got fixed. They fixed Edgar's line. Thank God.
Is this him trying to date Realm?
Yeah, I was actually Techno and I we were talking about this. Edgar's line in the Super NES version, I can't remember what was in the Super NES version, but the GBA version it was something like, not even a lady. He's hoping you're still around in 8 years, kid.
Yeah.
It's so gross.
Yeah, and they changed it now. I can't. They grow up. They grow up faster than you think. You're gonna break a lot of hearts when you get older, kid. And I was mentioning to Techno, it was actually even worse than the original Japanese. And just to give context, Realm is 10. Legal age of consent in Japan under certain conditions can go as low as 13.
It doesn't matter
But
what
the
the
original
legal
line
age.
was-
It's a bad.
I know.
Scene.
I'm just
It's a
saying.
bad scene.
Cultural differences.
No.
But the original Japanese line was like, "No, don't even think about it. That would be criminal." And it's like,
Oh no.
like, yes.
Yeah, it's gross.
That's
Yeah.
real bad. All
But
right.
basically,
Anyway.
I can answer what the Super NES line was for us.
I
the
don't
English
want to
version,
move on
'cause
from
Ted
this
Woolsey,
topic.
Ted Woolsey said, "That's gross. I'm ignoring that, and I'm gonna put in my own line, even if it doesn't make any sense." So, the line that Edgar says is literally just, "Lighten up, okay?" Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It does
with
make
what-
sense because Rome's got a mouth on her. But
yeah, I mean, I guess like it doesn't flow in like logically from what was previously said, right?
Mhm.
He literally just says that, right? But so he kind of ignored that, and obviously the Pixel Remaster guys have said, yeah, Ted Woolsey had the right idea. Let's ignore that, and they fixed the line. Thank God they fixed the line. So, I mean, it's not a gameplay improvement, but they did fix Edgar.
yeah, we don't need Edgar to be a pedophile.
No,
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 right.
let's not even. Yeah. Anyway, let's moving
Yeah,
hard
because-
on from this topic as fast as my feet
Yes.
and my voice could carry me. Let's talk about the intro because this is actually bugging me. Techno, you and me have actually talked about this before, but the intro to this game has been, of course, remastered. Now,
Yeah.
this is an iconic scene. It's the three Magitech armors walking through the snow to Narsh up to the north. And, you know, the opening, I think it's Terra's theme that plays over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Terra's theme
Or
plays.
a remix, I think, of it.
I think it might just be the regular Terra's. I don't know. We'll have to double check. I think it's just regular Terra's theme is playing, but it's a great like emotional scene. You got those Mode 7 graphics coming in. They have recreated the graphics. I could complain about minor bullshit like I don't like the little purple thing and the lighting's not right. Whatever. No one wants to hear from me. I'm an old head. Who cares? What I don't like is that they removed the opening credits from the opening credits scene.
Yeah, I don't get
Yeah.
that.
So I have a little bit of context on it, right? And just to be clear, I am not defending the decision to not credit the original developers, but basically the pixel remasters of the game are built from the ground up, as opposed to previous ones which were ported from Super NES. Like, so like the original one, like, you know, the NES version was created, it was ported to Game Boy Advance. And then the mobile version did this really weird thing where they have like a GBA emulator emulating the GBA and then putting graphics over it. It's weird. I don't understand it, but that's what they decided to do for that. So that's still a port. Whereas the Pixel remasters are pretty much created from scratch. And in the games industry, I don't understand why this is, but for some reason, when you've made a game from scratch and you didn't you didn't take code or something from the previous one, then they just don't include your credits at all. Like they only credit the new team.
Is that
and then they
standard?
Say, oh, by the way, we adapted from this team. Yes. I don't think it's a good standard, but that's how they do it. It's really weird. It's
But
like,
then why not just include the Pixel Remaster team credits in the
Yeah.
opening?
Well, that's the thing. Because they used the Pixel Remaster credits for all 6 of them, because it was the same team on all 6. It's basically just a copy paste job.
Right.
So they didn't want to put in the effort to remaster those credits, those opening credits, for the opening scene of it, and as a result, you know, the opening scene is is kind of reduced in how good it is.
That is
it's
weirdly
a shame.
cheap in very strange places. That's the other thing I have.
I agree.
That's the other issue I have with this Pixel remaster, is that it just seems like a strangely budget job. Like, this is not the lush and eloquent final version of these games you'd want. It's just kind of like, we did as much as we could to say that it's new, and in, I don't know, 10 years there'll be a new version, and this version will be forgotten entirely.
I would say that, except, that remastered soundtrack and the opera scene that has voices this time, that is not, a rush job.
Yeah, I do get the sentiment. Like, 6 is the least of that of the Pixel remasters, because I think they recognized they needed to go in hard on 6 and not half-ass it. And mostly they did. And, they do reuse some old sprites, but backgrounds and that, but they still look fine. But I do understand that sentiment with the Pixel remasters, because in so many places they did just reuse graphics from the Game Boy Advance versions. And I'll say, a thing that really pisses me off when they did that is when it leads to artistic consistency. Most glaringly with Final Fantasy, the original one, they went through the trouble to create new battle sprites for the 4 Fiends that more closely matched the original NES sprites. But they reused the field sprites they used in the Game Boy Advance versions. So Kraken on the field is blue with a purple cape, but then when you get into battle with him, suddenly he's purple with a green cape. And it's why would you reuse that sprite? It takes less than 5 minutes to just recolor it. I could do it in Photoshop and within 5 minutes. Why would you not recolor this? Why would no one go over this? And I don't think it's a tall order to ask the character an enemy not suddenly change color when they go between battle in the field. I don't think that's a lot to ask.
Sorry, DrakeyC. I have to go check on a cake that I'm baking right now. So you two run the show. I'll be out for a second. Have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So when it comes to reusing stuff, the only thing I'll say there is Final Fantasy VI reuses stuff from itself a lot. That cave entrance, for instance, that's in 5 different places or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, basically all the cave stuff and a lot of things from Mount Koltz were reused all over the place. And some of the sprites were reused all over the place, even within the game. So, to an extent, reusing assets is kind of what Final Fantasy VI has always done.
Yeah, and plus, that's reusing assets, but the assets still look good. The pixel,
that's true.
Final Fantasy VI still looks great. And there's people that still even now are saying I think the original some people, I won't get into it, but some people think the Super NES versions of some of the new sprites that were improved look better. And that's a valid opinion to have, because they do look good in some places, and in some cases they do look better. One thing I've seen is that the Pixel Remaster sprites, the sprites for the party members are too bright and desaturated compared to the Super NES versions, and there's people now trying to take the Pixel Remaster sprites and recolor them to be more like the Super NES versions, and they look better than both. So yeah, I don't mind them reusing graphics because they still look good.
I can see that. I do think that graphically, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster is definitely they put way more effort into this one than they did to the other 5, because the only one I've played through fully is Final Fantasy VI. It's Final Fantasy V, but I played through quite a bit of Final Fantasy IV as well. Welcome back. Yeah, so I played a bit of. I'm about halfway through Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster, I want to say, and compared to those two, I do think 6 Pixel Remaster is clearly the one that they said, all right, well, players love this one, and we can't mess this one up. And they clearly took that to heart, because they did a way better job with this than they did with the others. Because even though, like, I think of the 3 that I've played, I would say this is at the top. 5 is the second best, and I think Final Fantasy IV has too many decisions that confuse me, like the fact that they're using the Final Fantasy IV Advanced translation instead of the PSP one. I don't understand why they did that.
That is weird.
Terms like Feymarch and Eidolon have been used in other media for Final Fantasy IV for a decade now. Why take them out?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's weird choices that all across these things. You guys didn't talk about the opera scene yet, did you?
We didn't yet. We can talk about it now.
Okay, so DrakeyC, you've seen it, and I've watched it on YouTube.
I have.
Okay.
So I won't get into specifics because I can't even describing it. Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything for Techno. I knew the opera was gonna be amazing just because instinctually if they're gonna go hard on any specific part of Final Fantasy VI, it's gonna be the opera. So this is gonna be, from a technical perspective, this is gonna be the best part of the game, and it is. It's the 2D sprites on the 3D area environments. It has full voice acting. Some of the characters have new animations for them doing the singing. I don't recall the Game Boy Advance translation of Final Fantasy VI well, but I believe that the lyrics were retranslated, mostly so they could work better as proper song lyrics that people have to actually sing in rhythm with the music. And overall, it's just fantastic. And it's simple things like pulling the curtain, actually pulling back from the stage, spotlights that visibly come on and shine on the actors. It's like they went really hard, and it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah,
and the music, of course, is great too.
I mean, I might get crucified in this chat in a minute because I'll reveal that when I first played Final Fantasy VI, the first version I played was the mobile port that came out in 2014 and that everyone hates. And
bastard.
So obviously this is a massive improvement over that graphically.
Yeah, that's not a high bar.
Yeah. That looks like absolute ass.
Yeah.
So even considering that, when I played the opera for the first time in that version, I still found it impressive just because I was like, this was done on a Super Nintendo, and you can see in every version of it, before this one, you can see in every version within the limitations they had, within all the technical limitations of what they could achieve, given how little RAM they had and how they had I think it was 32 bits. Given how little
16 was in that generation.
16 bits. Okay,
yeah.
So given how little was available to them, they pulled out so many tricks and techniques here and there to mask the fact that it's still a 2D SNES game, but you're actually witnessing this grand orchestral musical composition and this huge event, and I still found it impressive even then. So the only way to really preserve that is they can say, all right, well, we don't have those limitations anymore, but we're still gonna make it the most epic part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And from the sounds of it, they did exactly that.
They've pushed for very HD 2D effect for a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
Which is similar to Octopath.
Not as dramatic, because it doesn't have the same like what they do in the HD 2D versions is they really go hard on the depth of field and the glare to really sell 3D. Where in this, it looks more like everything is cohesive. A lot of what they want to do in Octopath is they want to kind of show off how distinct the sprites are from the 3D work, just to kind of build the contrast and make it pop out a little bit more, I think. And it's a very cool effect. Okay. It looks gorgeous. I think this version looks good. As, if you're going to make it on modern systems, I still, as you've said, Techno, you kind of alluded to what is so cool about the opera scene is that it is taking very archaic and very limited tools and pushing it to incredible places. Like, that is a preview of what JRPGs were going to be for the next decade. It was going to be this vast narrative kind of experience where they could go and really try to go and push and have camera work and all kinds of things. And I think it's beautiful. I think what's also beautiful is the fact that they did chiptune singing with it. So it's little bleeps and stuff, and it still sounds incredible. I remember playing it even on my GBA, even admitting that the GBA version has a worse sound effect. It is worse sound quality in every way in practically every song, except for Decisive Battle, which sounds better on the GBA version for some reason. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The fact that my little GBA was going and singing to me was just so adorable. I had to go show it to, like, everyone I knew. I'm like, look, it's singing. It's trying. It's like Hal in the movie 2001, It's Singing. Except, you know, it doesn't have, it can't talk. So them putting in singing and putting in 3D, you can't recapture that magic. Even trying to break the rigid 2D confines of this remake, I don't think does it. Also, I think the English singing and even the Japanese singing kind of sounds like shit. Frankly,
I think to an extent, like, Celeste is supposed to, just because, like, you know, she's not a professional
really.
singer.
I don't think
she's not supposed to.
No.
But I think the other two sounded good.
Yeah, well, my issue is
sounded a little off.
My issue is that they have remade this several times already. There's a Black Mages version, and there's a what's the other remaster thing? Oh my god, I'm blanking completely on it.
Distant Worlds.
Distant Worlds. Thank you. This is why I have other people on the podcast.
I saw Distant Worlds live.
Oh, that's so cool.
I saw Distant Worlds live. Yeah, and when they did the opera live with actual professional singers in the London Symphony Orchestra, and bruh, like,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That was a hell of an experience.
I need to do this at some point in my life.
Yeah, so I mean, I can understand what you're saying if you're like, oh, well, it doesn't sound like that. Yeah,
it doesn't sound like that. She's not
sound like
the singer is. She might be a professional singer. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like they splurged particularly to get a singer who could do those opera high notes. She's just kind of singing the song, and it sounds weirdly pitched. Like there's auto-tune going or some kind of reverb. It just doesn't sound very natural or good.
There's a lot of reverb, but I think like so where I disagree is I think on the part of Celeste, that's intentional because she's not a professional singer. Celeste is not professional. She's not the real Maria. The real Maria would be able to, you know, sound like a professional, who's someone who's like, you know, can hit all those high notes and whatever. Whereas Celeste has literally just come along, been given the lyrics and said, sing.
Yeah, I would.
Maybe
that makes sense.
I think I have to replay the opera and screw up the lines on purpose to hear how they do that. Because I didn't hear that. I just did the opera right the first time. I'm wondering, like, how does it sound when you screw up and you do the wrong lines? How does the singing sound then?
I've never
checked that out just out of curiosity.
I've never dared screw up the lines just because I love the scene and I want it to run well. So I have actually never tested it even in any version. But what I'm going to say is there is a version of the scene that makes sense in the canon of the story where, you know, Celeste is not a professional opera singer and her trying to be that. We could get like her trying ridiculous high notes and then a glass shatters or something. But they're not going for comedy in this scene. They're going for how beautiful can we push this technology. So even breaking the very logic of the story, for that second, Celeste is a professional opera singer and she's nailing it. It is supposed to be the most beautiful thing they can pull off.
Yeah, I can understand that perspective, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. Like, I'm just saying, like, I
get where you're coming from, yeah.
I understand why they went with this artistic choice. Would this other artistic choice have been better? Probably. But, you know, it doesn't ruin the scene for me, is what I'm going to say.
And I'll mention, you mentioned just the opera from a technical perspective. There's a quote, I can't remember where I heard this, but there was a good quote I read somewhere. It mentioned, for a musician, having to work with Super NES technology is like a painter having to work with Crayola. And
Yeah.
Nobuo Uematsu took his Crayola and did the Sistine Chapel
Yes.
with Final Fantasy VI. And he
Pretty
really
much.
did. And I think once again, like with terms of the Pixel Remaster engine, I remember like with it, the lead up to it, I remember thinking, you look at the other two Super NES games, and then you look at Final Fantasy VI. In its time, it was a technical leap forward. Like you look at Final Fantasy 4 and 5 and 6, like scenes of when you recruit Gao and Cyan and Sabin and Gao are stopping and moving around the battle screen and having a full conversation with animations. Those weren't in the other games. Sprites did not have the same range of animations. Of course, the field sprites were smaller, and you didn't have the kind of huge attack animations that Final Fantasy VI could have. You didn't have Mode 7.
Yep.
So I was actually wondering, from a technical perspective, can whatever engine they're using for Pixel Remaster handle Final Fantasy VI? Because we hadn't seen the other 5 PR remasters do anything that 6 did.
There's Mode 7 in Final Fantasy V.
Opera.
Sorry, I needed to point this out. In Final Fantasy V, there's some Mode 7. I'm pretty sure when the meteors crash, I think they do some Mode 7 there. I'm like 90%
They might.
sure of
I'm
this.
not sure. I don't fully recall.
No, there is. You're right.
Okay.
They do Mode 7 for the meters.
But
Okay.
yeah, so when it's coming out now and seeing them do all this stuff in Final Fantasy VI, after all, and then go even further from a technical perspective with the opera looks fantastic. But here's the one flaw with the opera looking so fantastic: it makes everything else look like shit. And like, I want to see like the stuff they did with the opera with the 2.5D. Give me more. I want to see the apocalypse doing that. I want to see the confrontation in Kefka's tower doing that. I want to see other big moments doing that. And if you can do that in the other games. You can like the battle with the giant of Babel coming in Final Fantasy IV. You could do more with that. You could do so much with this. If you can do this much with this engine, do it with the other games.
The way I'm picturing it is like the way I imagine it went down is like there would have been a conversation where they said, okay, well, so Pixel Remaster, we've got a somewhat limited budget because the point of this is we're just trying to remaster it as if it was back when the games came out for the nostalgia purpose, right? You know, we're gonna
They're
preserve
just
the
porting it.
nostalgia of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so
It's more
gonna
than
be,
nostalgia, though, I will say. There is a kind of preservationist historical archive, which I kind of got alluded to when I was talking about how cool the opera scene is in the Super Nintendo. Like, you kind of, when you play 1 through 6, the original versions, you can see this arc of history that's happening. And I kind of hate the fact that we're losing that with this. I still really do not understand the underlying philosophical point of this. Like, what they're actually going for, I've never understood, but we've been through this a million times.
So what I imagine happened is they said, right, limited budget, we're going from the nostalgia thing. And then someone on the team would have fought back and said, like, okay, if we can't do it for the rest of the port, at least let us do it for the opera. Like, at least let us do it for this, because this one has to be the mind-blowing one, the same way it was when it came out. And then eventually they caved and said, all right, I'll allocate you this amount of resources for the opera scene, but that's it. You're not getting it for the rest. I imagine that is probably what happened.
Yeah.
And also with how these have rolled out, like the first 3 and then 4, 5, and 6, and it's taken over like 8 months to get this far, you do get the sense that I think they were still kind of figuring things out as they went along.
Yeah.
Like maybe they didn't know like how to do this stuff, the Final Fantasy VI stuff in the engine, and had to do some behind the scenes work to make it happen. You know, so maybe they didn't do it because they didn't know how at the time, or they weren't sure if they could. But they can now, and like, I wouldn't mind like go back to the like. I feel like we've been beta testers for the Pixel remasters. Now Now I feel like we see like Final Fantasy VI is the final result of the final beta. I wouldn't mind seeing what all the Pixel remasters could be now that we could go this hard as we did in the Opera for other places. Now I know like from like a practical perspective, like I was saying, re-release the pixel remasters with new graphical sequences or anything like that. But you get what I'm saying, From a technical perspective, they could have done more now.
These have been works in
progress.
Oh, sorry. We keep talking over each other. I can't fix that fucking problem. I don't know how to. All right, you go, Techno.
All right, I'll make mine I'll make my point real quick, and then you can go. But anyway, so the way I look at it is like, if you look at the time frame for these games, like, and when the different ports came out, like, the games came out in like so 6 was released in 1994? Question mark?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 1994, roughly, right?
Yes, because last year was the 27th anniversary.
Yeah. And then next decade, we had the finest Fantasy for Advance, all 6 games remastered and released. Well, not remastered, ported, I should say, to the GBA, right? 10 years later, roughly 10 years later, we have the mobile ports of 5 and 6, which everyone hated. You're
forgetting Advance, but yeah.
That. You can't buy those versions anymore. Those ports are dead. But so those got released about 10 years later, and almost 10 years later, like it's been about 8 years since then, we now have the 6 ports, like we now have these 6 versions, these 6 remastered versions, right? So I think, there's going to be another progression where in about 8 to 10 years time, we're going to get another, like, 6 versions of these games.
I'll take another version of 6 as long as it's like I'll take Final Fantasy VI Remake.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to get another version of these games, all remastered, all prettied up, and for whatever platforms exist at the time, maybe by then video game streaming will have taken off. Who knows? But we'll get ports for those platforms at the time, and we'll be in a totally different place. There'll be a totally different conversation we're having by then. So what I say is, I love these versions. I completely understand. It's like when Blue brings up every single argument against them, I don't even disagree with it necessarily. I don't even disagree necessarily with anything you're saying in terms of questioning a lot of the artistic decisions and wondering if there should have been a much higher budget allocated to these games to preserve them a little better or to remake them somewhat better. I don't even necessarily disagree with any point that anyone's brought up. I just think I'm happy with these, and I would love to see the next ones improve from that, because they very clearly heard our feedback loud and clear with regards to those the 2014 ports that we got, because people hated those, and this is clearly a step up from that. So let's hope that in 10 or so years time we're gonna get another step up.
And I feel pretty much the same way. And what I have heard is of course, the story for Final Fantasy VI forever has been, well, the Western fans love it, Japanese fans not so much. I don't know anyone that's in tune with the Japanese side of the fan base, so I can't say if this is true or not. But I've heard apparently Final Fantasy VI's reputation in Japan is improving because it is being remade, and they are discovering, hey, this game's actually aged really well, and it was pretty good and ahead of its time. So we know that there's rumors they're going to do Final Fantasy IX Remake. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that in 5 years' time or so, they may announce Final Fantasy VI Remake after all, either in 3D or in 2.5, full 2.5D. And either way, I'd be down for it.
I would be down with either one of those. I personally am in the camp where I believe the Final Fantasy IX Remake is 100% real. But anyway, I mean, are we coming to closing thoughts on Final Fantasy VI?
I kind of think you did your closing thoughts.
I gave mine.
Yeah.
I gave mine. Basically, you can give yours.
Yeah, I'm going to give my closing thought now, which is there is a version of Final Fantasy VI that Square Enix could make, which I would definitely play. And it doesn't need to be faithful in any way to the Super Nintendo version. I'm talking, let's do a full 3D version of Final Fantasy VI except you style the art style like Nobuo Uematsu's artwork, which is entirely possible and has been possible for like 10 years now.
You mean Yoshitaka Amano's artwork?
God damn it!
Because I don't know what Nobuo Uematsu's artwork looks like. He's a musician.
Yes, Amano's artwork. Yes. Style like Amano's artwork, not Uematsu. God damn it.
Well, we've already had Uematsu's composition.
Yes.
Like, as in what he would have done if he had, the instrumentation. But anyway, so Amano's artwork.
Yes. It is my turn, all right? You're from Texas. You should know your Skip Bayless, whining about his turn. Anyway, it's my turn. Anyway, so we have had so many Final Fantasies do so many different things. It's wild to me that with all the advances in technology and everything else, and with all the different ways you can make games and creative indie artsy decisions, nobody's ever made a game that looks like that Amano work. I even want like the kind of brushy stuff, all that thing. I think that's the perfect version that we should get. That would not replace the original and wouldn't even try to replace the original.
Well, a quick thing I will toss out is I've seen a very common sentiment. I don't know if you keep up with Final Fantasy XIV at all, but there are some enemies that people have said, this looks like an Amano art come to life. And it really does. So I can show you some stuff after this if you're interested in that.
I think I want the kind of brush style, kind of stroke effect happening, where it really looks like a painting that's come to life. I think that's what we really...
Okay, I get what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of, think like Okami, except, we've advanced so much further beyond Okami now.
If we're talking about paintings coming to life, there's a character in Final Fantasy VI who does that.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically you want
Banish
Rom
work
to
against
draw
them
Final
still?
Fantasy VI.
Yeah. I want Chicory Final Fantasy VI. How about that?
So one last point that I forgot to mention is I have not heard Dancing Mad yet.
Neither have I.
Oh shit! How did I not listen to that
until I fight it?
I'll listen to that the moment this podcast is done.
I also saw Dancing Mad live. Oh my god, most amazing thing I've ever seen.
I gotta go to this show, man.
But yeah, so cause I mean, when you think about it, the final boss battle is kind of similar to the opera in the sense of they're just pushing what they can do to make it like the most grand kind of epic thing you've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I personally think it is better than One Winged Angel. But I know there's a lot of differences of opinion there. One Winged Angel is amazing. I prefer Kefka, but to each their own.
Yeah,
One Winged Angel is.
I'm just really excited.
One Winged Angel is one song, and Dancing Mad is 4 different movements. So it's kind of unfair, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, I guess it's an unfair comparison, but it's similar from the sense of it's a musical composition that's far beyond what the system should be capable of. You think about it, Final Fantasy VII, you go through the game, you never get to a point where there's any kind of human voice at all. And then all of a sudden you get to the end, and now there's a proper choir.
Yeah, but that's not as impressive on the PlayStation 1, which could do voice acting and did. Anyway, DrakeyC tried to say something, and he hasn't given his final thoughts yet, so let's do that.
Yeah, I was just going to give my final thoughts. If you guys want to finish what you're saying now, I can wait a sec.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to go ahead. That was just my final point. I'm just so hyped for the final boss. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. My final thoughts is so far with Pixel Remaster, I love it. My only major complaint is the world map is too bright, and there's little tiny nitpicks where I think this was better in the original, but as a whole, I do feel this is as close to a definitive version of Final Fantasy VI as we can get, and I might go so far as to say it is the definitive version. Yes, it's missing the GBA bonus content, but does the game really lesser for not having it? I don't really think so. Yeah. As its own, I don't think there's been a better version of Final Fantasy VI to play. If assuming even you could get any version you wanted and play it now, which version should you get? Get the Pixel Remaster port, because at its worst, in whatever areas, it's at least as good as the other versions, and in most aspects, I think it's better. It's never in my opinion, it's never looked better. It's never sounded better. It's never played better, and it's never run better. The game, it also, of course, it just runs really smoothly overall, and just minor things like the sprites being able to move around the screen more freely and not being confined to the grid, doing cutscenes where like a character is knocked back or something like that, makes the things look better. So yeah, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster is the finale of this remake saga, and they saved the best for last in more ways than one. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I completely agree with basically everything said there. Like, you know, and that's always the thing I was most excited for with these, was not so much playing it myself, but the fact that, you know, I can point, if I'm trying to like introduce my friends to these games and say, hey, here's my favorite game of all time, it's Final Fantasy VI, here's how you play it. That's always what I was most excited for with these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is good that there exists an easily accessible version where I don't have to tell somebody to buy a GBA or a GBA emulator. Though, with the Steam Deck, you could get a GBA emulator very easily very soon. And Technobliterator, these have not come out on Switch just yet, but they will be out on the Steam Deck, which released last week to nobody. And will very slowly release over the course of this year, probably to like 4 different people. Anyway, Technobliterator...
Do you know what else you can play him on? Funnily enough, you can play him on your Tesla car, which now plays all Steam games. It's so stupid. I don't know why.
So are you saying that in 10 years we'll be playing Final Fantasy VI remake on Tesla home video game consoles?
Yes. I'm going to die and crash my car because I need to remember Phantom Rush's Blitz input, and then bang, I just fucking die.
Left, right.
Anyway, I need to do...
Damn it, I meant to put it on the controller, not the steering wheel!
Anyway, Techno, we have a Media Wiki update, so I figure since we are a wiki, you should go tell the people at home what's going on with that. In the meantime, I have to check on my cake again, so I'll be out for a second. You all have fun.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. So, the news regarding the Media Wiki update is the basically the platform we're on, which is Fandom. They used to use an old version of MediaWiki and they stuck with it for a long time because they basically put too much shit on top of it. And then they said, okay, well now it would be too difficult for us to update it, so we're just not going to bother updating it anymore. You know, but then a few years ago they said, screw that, that was a bad idea. We're now going to stay up to date with the times. And they did something called UCP, Unified Content Platform. I don't remember. But like basically that was like, okay, we're gonna actually update to the latest MediaWiki version, which at the time was 1.33, right? So now that we're on that new version, they can much more easily bring MediaWiki updates. So we're gonna get 1.37, and that's coming later this year. Now, as for how much this will change things, if you're just a reader and you have no interest in ever editing or anything, it's probably not going to change things for you at all. Like, it will make our lives a lot easier. Like, you know, it brings new things that make our lives a little bit easier. Like, there's a few bug fixes which weren't related to fandom software at all. They were just related to MediaWiki. Oh, by the way, I should mention, like, for those who don't know what MediaWiki is, it's the same software that is used for Wikipedia, and basically we're using that same software, right? So basically all it does is it's a bunch of different bunch of different updates that bug fixes for that software, and then there's a few nice things related to permissions. You know, it updates the JavaScript that we use. That's probably the biggest change for us specifically, ? But yeah, you know, it's a new update. You know, we're staying updated with the times, and please look forward to it.
Okay, that sounded very informative. I'm back. I can give you an update.
I don't understand the software end of things.
I don't understand any of it either. I barely edit anymore. I mean, let's be honest. Anyway, update on my cake. I'm making a round cinnamon roll, which you make as a king cake for Mardi Gras here in the U.S. It has...
okay.
All right, so it blew up in the oven, so it is no longer round. It is just enormous. Its
nice.
shape. I'm sure it's going to be delicious, but it is just a dome of stuff now. It's just the shape is very unexpected. You imagine a circle. It was supposed to be a circle, and it's become just a mountain. Anyway, we should do the news, right? The Final Fantasy
that was
news.
The first bit of news.
Yes.
Yes.
Final Fantasy news. DrakeyC, can you give me a news song? Like a little news ditty.
Do 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 do.
That'll do.
Yeah, that was okay. Technobliterator. Now it's your turn.
Put me on the spot. What do you want from me?
Now it's
My turn to do a news song?
It's your turn. It's your attempt. You do a news song for me.
Do 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 do.
No. No, just no.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. No.
No, just no. Anyway, I'm not doing one because that sounds really embarrassing. I'm not doing that.
Oh,
Anyway.
so you'll make your guests do one.
Yeah.
But the host won't provide their own news song.
No.
Well, no, he's the host. He makes
Yeah.
other people do things. Don't you know how
Exactly.
television works?
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Fair
totally
point.
on TV right now. Anyway, let me start with the most important news. Robert Pattinson loves Final Fantasy VII.
So we already knew that he did, but the update is that he described people's choice between Tifa and Aerith as how every guy figures out what love is.
And he knows something about love triangles, considering he was at the center of Team Jacob versus Team Edward.
Oh, is that a Twilight thing?
That is a Twilight thing. DrakeyC,
Okay.
Team Edward and Team Jacob, please tell me.
Team Buffy.
Wrong. Alright, Technobliterator, Team Edward or Team Jacob? Let's go.
I don't fucking know. I never saw those films.
You gotta pick one,
I
come
don't
on.
know the first thing about.
Alright,
Which
alright.
which one's the first one?
Alright, Edward is the vampire and Jacob is the werewolf.
Okay. Okay. Well, I like werewolves more than vampires, so let's go with that one.
Alright. You are a man that values sensuality more than you value, I don't know, intelligence. Jacob's kind of a himbo.
I don't value either of those. I don't value either of those characters. I don't know the first thing about them.
Well, this is very important and will remain a very important divisive issue. If anything, the most important and divisive thing, the thing that is tearing the world apart, there's nothing more important happening right now, more controversial, more terrifying than Team Edward versus Team Jacob. Anyway.
Yeah, there's no news events of the day that are more like politically charged than that.
Yep.
There's no worse conflict going on in the world.
Honestly, I think that's completely fair because the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 does canonize either of those ships permanently. I'm pretty sure there will be rioting.
There will be violence,
Well,
yes.
Like
People will die, the streets will burn, rivers will run red.
You know
The
what?
shipping wars will escalate beyond anything seen before.
I'm gonna have to suddenly change gears and be like, you know what? This doesn't even sound funny anymore. Fuck. This is now like really bad taste.
That never stopped you before.
I know, but like now, like legitimately, you can't, like, you just can't.
Yeah, no,
joke.
no, I understand. Yeah.
No, I get you.
Anyway, topic change. Final Fantasy XIV. There was a live letter 68. There's going to be a graphical update and a whole bunch of other stuff. Most importantly, graphical
but I
update.
think the most exciting part. That's the most exciting part for the people that play 14. But the people who don't play 14, the exciting part is they're making single player a possibility,
Yes.
that game?
Oh yeah, I did get a text about this from my friend. Yeah, so it looks like they might be adding a version where you can play the entire game, I guess, as a single download. I guess you still need to be connected to the internet the whole time, though, right?
I think so. Question mark. But
So
I mean, like, I haven't played it single player.
Okay.
I haven't played it, but I
don't
did
know
watch the letter.
like-
Another change they're looking at making is may streamline the game so it is easier for people who want to experience it as a single player game, because they're aware that people like some people are just turned off by MMOs, so they want to like add ways to accommodate people who want the single player experience. And like some of the older, they mentioned like they're going to be walling it out, but they have what's called the trust system, which is basically you can form a party of NPCs that are accompanying you in story, and they'll run the dungeon with you. And they're going to, they added that for, I believe, I don't recall if it was Endwalker or Shadowbringers where they introduced it, but either way, they're going to be implementing it for older dungeons as well, and doing some other like main quest things, and that so that players who want to play through on their own can use the trust system and fight through the game with AI allies. So then they don't need to get into the MMO multiplayer aspects.
That just
So like so that's the thing. It should be kind of cool. So it's basically for people like me who are like, you know, we've heard amazing things about the story, and the story is apparently like the best Final Fantasy story since 12.
So I've been
following
told
the story. It does get really good, yeah. Like I don't play. I've just been watching. I just watch streamers play it, but it does get really good.
I was told the entire story back in December, and I think I lost my fucking mind listening to it being told to me. There's a lot going on in those
games. In a good way or bad way?
You know, it's hard to say. A lot was happening on that podcast. I think I don't know if I was.
It does have that's the thing with MMOs. They can have because they can roll out story updates every few months and major expansions every couple of years. They can have stories with scope and complexity to them beyond what a normal single player 40-hour Final Fantasy can do.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to get into with the story.
I think I was defeated is what happened. That's the way I'd put it. I was defeated by Final Fantasy XIV. Anyway. But single player should be cool. Good for
I would say that I personally would love to check out 14 at some point. I don't know if I'll ever have time in my schedule. If I do, then it's great to know that, you know, the fact that a single player version exists will like alleviate some of my fears about stepping back into it again. So I think that's the most exciting part of the update. It's those of us who we don't have the time or money for an MMO. Like, you know, there's now a way we can experience what everyone has been telling us.
Yeah.
That upsets some people because so much of the game is free now. Well, you don't have an excuse. You can't pay for it. It's free. It's a free trial.
See, I am 31, so I have all the money you could ever imagine for games. There's nothing in video games that I could ever want that I could not afford. I just don't have the time for it. I don't have 100 fucking hours or 2,000 hours, whatever you would need for Final Fantasy XIV. Also, I don't like MMOs.
Yeah.
Just multiplayer, single player. I don't like the combat at all.
You're the one that Yoshi P is targeting because he says he doesn't want people to go in with that mindset.
All right. Well, what Yoshi P should target me with. Sorry. What Yoshi P should target me with is Final Fantasy 16, because where the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want news on that too.
Anyway.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
And I'm not even as huge on it as some people. Like, you know, I agree that we have waited way too long to hear anything for that game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for a Final Fantasy 13 moment when, after you've been waiting for the game for so long, you finally get to see it, and then it's like, oh my god, this is a piece of shit. Anyway. There's more news. Next month, we have 2 new Final Fantasy games coming out. One is called Chocobo GX, which I think is coming out on the 10th.
GP. Wait, is it?
Yes.
Is it Chocobo GP?
Chocobo GP is coming out March 10th. Next month, by the way, is a massive month for Square Enix. Because on March 4th, Triangle Strategy comes out. On March 10th, Chocobo GP comes out, which is gonna have a Season 1 pass with Cloud and Squall. Is this a mobile game?
And more importantly, Terra is playable riding Magitech armor, so it is automatically the best game ever.
I thought this was a game you bought and just owned, but it looks like it might be a mobile game? Or something?
Apparently, I think there is a mobile version and a home console version, but I'm not completely sure.
Alright, I'm not 100% sure what's going on with this. There might be a demo eventually. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, where I'm still, like, a bit too confused about what the business model for it is. Like, if it's just
Milk
like a
the
Mario
money.
Kart.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but if it's just like a Mario Kart kind of game, or not so much, I mean, Mario Kart has all the characters in it, but if it's just like a Super Smash Brothers kind of game, where the game is complete. Right, but where the game is complete and then you just get characters on top of that, would check it out. Would be cool.
And there's like, apparently it is just for Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I guess it's just like, it's gonna have DLC.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'd be cool with that if that's all it is. But if it turns out it comes out and it's like, oh, by the way, there's no characters in it until you buy them. Also, you paid full price for it. Then I just feel like, wait, what the fuck? So, I'm gonna reserve judgment. But I mean, it looks cute.
I think
Like-
they learned not to do that with Theatrhythm and All the Bravest.
Oh my god.
Okay.
The early
Yeah,
2010s, and Square Enix was still figuring out how tolerant we would be to microtransactions, and I think by now they've gotten the message. The answer is very little.
Okay, so I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at Nova Crystallis' article on it. Looks like you're getting Mithril as a currency to get in-game prizes, one of which is Cloud, another one of which is Squall. So it might be like Overwatch, where you buy the game and then you have these Skinner box things you deal with. There's a level system on here, too.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of
I
makes
guess
it...
that's not too bad.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about any of that. That's... Anyway, I have some real thoughts about, these boxes and shit. I've been too negative tonight. I'm not going to get into that now. Anyway, one thing that's slightly more exciting is March 18th is when Stranger in Paradise Final Fantasy Origin will release. And there's a whole bunch of information about that. We have new sexy Marilith. It's hot Marilith that fucks.
I haven't seen that.
Yep.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, well,
okay,
it's
that's a
on.
thing.
This article was posted 2 weeks ago. We could see the Lufenians. I've never had to pronounce this word before. Lufenians, fine. They also are striking, I guess is the way to put it. And we have a whole bunch of jobs. So there's Dark Knight, there's a Void Knight, there's a Ninja, and there's a ton more. There's Dragoon, there's Knight, there's lots of stuff. It's gonna be a big old game.
Is that Monk?
What? Is there Monk?
Is that Monk?
I think there might have been Monk. I think
I think I've seen Monk in demos, but I don't remember.
Okay, I mean, if there's Monk, then I forgive all the problems with the game. Otherwise, I'm gonna skip it. I think I've made my thoughts on Shadow the Hedgehog Final Fantasy Origin kind of well known throughout these podcasts at this point.
Well, you still have to play. Dirge of Cerberus if you want Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I'm not playing that either. I mean, I might be forced to at some point, but I'm not.
It's not that long.
Play it.
You could finish it in a weekend.
Okay, that's good.
Anyway,
Okay, that's good at least.
I can't find if Monk is on here because I'm reading the Wikipedia page, not our wiki. Why am I doing that? God damn it. Anyway.
I don't know. Why would you do that?
My one issue with this game is that it is coming out 1 month after a little game called Elden Ring. And if I am playing a Souls-like game, I cannot possibly justify to myself buying Stranger Paradise Final Fantasy Origin over Elden Ring. I just can't. I don't know who's making that decision.
I've heard very, very good things about
Yes.
Elden Ring. Like, again, it's not my thing. It's not what I would personally play. I've heard great things. But as far as competition goes, I mean, it's got that. The other one it's got is a game that just came out, Horizon Forbidden West, which I am going to buy very soon, as soon as I finish FF6 Pixel Remaster. Heard great things about it. Should be really good. But I think like I wouldn't be surprised if Shadow the Hedgehog Final Fantasy Origin doesn't do that well.
I mean, it's going to be
Other
our
than also just the first impressions, yeah.
it's going to be our topic next month, so somebody's going to have to play it because somebody's got to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it will sell like a couple million or so, which in Final Fantasy terms will be a bad performance.
Well, Square Enix has, as we've learned recently, Square Enix has unrealistically high expectations for most of their games.
They do.
Most of their games, yeah. I mean, they look at games that like performed really well, and they said, "Oh, that was below our expectations." So
there are people on the planet that have not yet bought the game, so it hasn't lived up to our expectations.
To be fair, every single human alive should play Guardians of the Galaxy, because that is a fan-fucking-tastic game.
Yes, it is. Oh man, I love that game. Like, so I love the story of that game. The gameplay itself is about a 7 out of 10. The story's a straight 10.
Yeah,
I haven't played it, so I can't comment.
It is better than the movies, to put it that way. Like, I love James Gunn and I love Guardians of the Galaxy. If they make Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I will be disappointed because the version of Guardians of the Galaxy that Eidos Montreal made is so much better. Anyway.
I will actually agree with that. The Guardians are my favorite of the Marvel and Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. I still like Guardians more. So, and I will co-sign what Blue just said.
Yep.
Like, the Guardians films are my favorites, and the Guardians game is even better than those films. So it absolutely deserved the Game Award that it got for Best Story. Absolutely deserved that. And yeah, I'm still excited for Guardians 3 though.
Oh, I should also mention. I forgot a couple news things. First off, Ever Crisis. DrakeyC, you mentioned that. Remember?
No, I think the Techno did.
Oh, sorry.
One of us talking about it.
Somebody did. Anyway,
one of us mentioned it. Yeah.
Anyway, Ever Crisis is going to release this year at some point, and they did release a opening movie for it, which just shows 3 anonymous-looking soldiers, who I think are the guys from the first Soldier FMV opening, just hanging out on a helicopter speaking Japanese. So I don't know what this is.
Oh, it's either that or it's something to do with Before Crisis. Like,
maybe.
It's one of the two.
No, it's
but basically.
It is not any of the player Turks. It's not any of them. I would recognize them. It's just 3 guys. Okay. I don't know who they are.
But basically, like, Square had this whole event saying, "Oh, it's the 20th, was it 25th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, and there's gonna be announcements, and they're all gonna be related to the first Soldier." And people went in like, "Oh my god, they're gonna reveal Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. They're gonna reveal the name of it, and there's gonna be a teaser trailer." It's like, don't get your hopes up, dude.
No.
That's not gonna happen, mate.
No.
Like, if they were gonna do something like that, it would be at something that more people are watching, like, you know, obviously not E3, but the equivalent of E3, like the PlayStation events. It'd be somewhere there. B, they would have told us in advance. Like, you know, they don't just hit us with surprises like that. So I think people's expectations going into that event were way too high. Yeah. But with that said, like, you know, the fact that they showed us anything from Ever Crisis at all is more than I would have expected, let's just say.
Yeah.
We still don't know what that game is. Like, we have not seen any gameplay of it. We just have heard them talk about it, and we have this entirely inexplicable opening movie, which doesn't even fit into what they've said, is it? Like,
well, give them 10 years, then they might decide to expand and rebrand it as Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. I mean, they did that before with Versus 13, and that went well.
Yeah, alright. I will play this.
I'm just being reminded of like how Versus 13 development went with. We haven't seen anything but like a trailer. Can we actually see the game?
And then it became a different game that wasn't very good, and we've been through that many times on this podcast. Yep. I have final news, and this is the most important news. So, last month, Nintendo had their big early 2022 Direct with all kinds of stuff. The most important thing, Chrono Cross is getting ported to the Switch. Live a Live is getting an HD 2D remaster. I mean, Live Alive is what it's called. I've never actually knew how to say this game. It's Live Alive. Is how
I never knew how to say its name either.
Yeah. Apparently, it's Live Alive.
I've never even heard of it, so I'll let you guys go.
Oh, also Front Mission 1. Front Mission 1, I forgot to mention that. That's also coming out.
Yeah, but I just want to say, like, because I remember, like, we were discussing when it happened, there was the NVIDIA leak about, like, there's all these games that are, like, allegedly exist in some form or are being developed in some form. And then people looked at Chrono Cross as their excuse to say, haha, the whole list is bullshit. That's never gonna happen.
That is what I said.
What happened.
I was completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, people looked at that as their, like, an argument for why the whole thing was kind of a bullshit list. And I thought, like, I wasn't dead sure whether that one existed, but I was dead sure the Final Fantasy IX remake exists, and I still think that exists, right?
I think so, because I think they did officially announce that they're doing the Netflix show. That was an official announcement, not a leak, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my argument. Well, if there's an animated show based on Final Fantasy IX, there is no way they wouldn't capitalize on that by also making a game. So that one just seems to make too much logical sense to me.
I'm looking at the GeForce Now leak to see what else is on there. Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster and Final Fantasy IX Remake are another thing. I did not believe. The tape exists. You can listen to me say, oh no, this is all bullshit, none of this is ever happening, and I've been proven wrong. So I will take that L.
I mean,
what else are you gonna do? I can accept when I'm wrong.
But I mean, this is an example of you being wrong is a good thing here. Just because, us getting Tactics Remastered is a great thing. And I would say a Final Fantasy IX remake is a great thing too. So, this is one of those where you're wrong, but it was actually good.
What if they do Tactics Pixel Remaster? We have to do this fucking argument again.
well, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
I swear I heard you just say, we'll cross that bitch.
I heard him say I heard him say squash that bridge.
Well, you both heard the wrong thing.
Yes,
but yeah, I mean, one of the things that does kind of worry me about the Pixel remasters is just that Blue's takes on these podcasts age a lot better than my takes. So,
well, I'm always more negative than you are.
Right. But your takes do have aged a lot better. Like, you were right on Final Fantasy 15. You were, I still don't think you were right on 12, the Zodiac Age. But you were right on, I'm trying to think of what else, but on most of them, like, I feel like your takes have just aged a lot better than mine have.
Look, I don't want to be the negative guy. I just, I'm an old head, and I want old things, I guess.
Oh, I'm older than you, and I'm not negative.
Well, I'm older in spirit. How about that? Wait, how old are you?
33.
Oh, wow. As old as Jesus was when he was crucified.
Yeah, I don't have as good as my hair and abs on as nice, though.
I'm as old as Tupac was when he died, so...
More important than Christ, Tupac, of course.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do love Tupac.
Anyway, now that we've reached the blasphemy portion of this podcast, we should probably wrap this up, right?
I thought we reached the blasphemy portion when you started being negative about Final Fantasy VI a little.
I wasn't negative about Final Fantasy VI, the original. I've had nothing but good things to say about it, except, I don't know.
There is no except.
I don't know, the tower is kind of boring in the second half of the game that you got to go to get the soul of Damasa.
That is one thing I'll say. you just did remind me, a quick note, just Final Fantasy VI. They added some mercy features, like in a couple spots there's pots of healing water. And it's not like they're located everywhere, but they're usually in places where, like, hypothetically, you could get soft lock and a player could get stuck. Like on the river ride, there's a pot of healing there. So if a player is stuck on the river and they didn't have healing items, they're not screwed. But one thing I am surprised is I remember, like...
They made the easiest game in the series even easier.
A bit, yeah, but, like, I think there's some spots in the game that could use a save point and didn't get one. And, like, one place I wouldn't have, I think I wouldn't have minded this. Put a save point in Zozo, because I've watched someone who played my ROM hack got all the way to the top of the tower in Zozo and wiped and had to climb the whole thing all over again. I can understand. Put a save point at the top of the tower, and I don't think they could put one in the. I wouldn't mind one in the Fanatics Tower either. Not even necessarily at the top, just halfway up, because that's also a brutal dungeon to have to redo.
Other than that, it's absolutely perfect.
They've added some mercy features.
The game has stood the test of time and is flawless in every single way, except for those two things. Also, what Edgar said, but we've been through that shit, like, exhaustively.
Yes.
Well, they fixed it. They fixed what
Edgar
said.
They fixed it. And now the game is
we're not going back to it. We're not going back.
Yeah, and the original version of it wasn't a problem.
They're just saying true to form.
New podcast rule: we will never ever discuss that ever again. It is an off limits topic. I've decided.
It is wiped. It is like the mobile port of the game. There is no Final Fantasy VI mobile on the FFWiki.
Yeah, there is no All the Bravest. I deleted that page just now. Anyway,
embossing say.
I think Square Enix would even be like, "Thank you. We'd like to forget it too."
Nobody at Square Enix.
We have
probably
Record Keeper now, and that's far better. Please play that now.
Yeah. Anyway, should I do our goodbyes at this point? The final wrap-up stuff that we do at the end of the podcast.
I'll end with my impression of Kefka.
Okay.
And I'll say, "Read my lips. Mercy is for wimps."
Wait.
There's a reason oppose rhymes with dispose. If they stand in your way, kill them.
Okay. Is this supposed to be Kefka? Because you kind of don't sound anything like him.
Yes, that's his Kefka.
That is my Kefka impression.
You're disregarding the Dissidia version, I guess, entirely of how he sounds?
I'm disregarding the Dissidia version because that was basically... they brought in a guy to do his best Mark Hamill impression, and I don't personally agree with that decision. He does a great Mark Hamill impression. I just don't personally agree that was the voice that I would use, necessarily. Like,
are you saying that Kefka is not just the Joker, but Final Fantasy? Because that's literally what he is.
Yeah, mostly, yeah, but like,
Why
think that
if you're gonna rip off a comic book villain, why not rip off one of the best ones?
Or like Green Goblin? Yeah, I mean, like
honestly, I would not. Now I'm just picturing William Dafoe playing Kefka in a live-action Final Fantasy VI adaptation, and I'd be down for that.
Oh, I would be down for that, 100%. No, I just think like I wouldn't. I personally just don't think they should XP another character 100%. So
I get you. Yeah, we get it. He's Kefka's the Joker, but don't lean into that too hard.
Yeah, that's would be my personal take on it.
Okay, I'm going to do my Kefka impression right now, and that'll happen in 1, 2, 3.
That's the best you got, really?
Anyway, all right, fine.
Okay.
All right, let's end this right now. We are the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast. Thank you for listening. We will be back in March to discuss Stranger of Paradise and Chocobo GP and probably other things. This podcast is produced by me, BlueHighwind. Joining me was DrakeyC and Technobliterator. Our music for the podcast is La Montana de los Caballos Jovenes, based on the Mount Koltz theme from, Final Fantasy VI, which was made by XPRTNovice off the Balance and Ruin OC Remix album. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. And I think I usually have a quote from a Final Fantasy game to end things out, but Techno kind of beat me to that, so we'll just end weird and awkwardly. Like this. Just weird and awkwardly. Dragged out way too long. You're like, when's he gonna stop? This is just getting worse for him and for everybody. But he's still doing it. He's still doing it. Why is there no succinct way to end a podcast? He's just rambling at this point.
Just like Final Fantasy VII.
Okay, I'm going to do my Kefka impression right now. And that'll happen in 1, 2, 3. Okay, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to edit in the Kefka noise and just put that in there like I did it perfectly. Now you two react like, oh my god, he's incredible. How did he do that?
That's the best you got, really?
No, play along, come on.